Landon, before we dive into the data real quick, I've had this theory for a while that potentially, hopefully you heard that conversation with Jenny about who are potentially Roku's competitors. But I've had this theory that a company like Apple is probably the greatest threat to a Roku if there is one. As you know, we already have these apps pre-installed onto our phone to kind of aggregate content streamers on your iPhone. And so on the counter side, you've talked about the success of Roku integrated TVs selling on Amazon. So I want to hear what your thoughts are on where Roku potentially is exposed, but really how strong the data really is.
Sure, I would agree. I think that Apple and Apple TV is probably the one. Amazon's Fire TV could have been. I think they kind of missed the mark a little bit, possibly because of the fact that Apple's got everyone using a device already, and not a lot of people have Amazon powered phones. So I think that Apple's got the advantage there as far as who's the competitor for Roku. But Jenny does make a great point when it comes to just the style, I guess, of revenue when you compare it to Pinterest, because ads are really key for this company. 2/3 of their revenue come from ads, and it's with Roku and Pinterest that there's a little bit of a difference in that these two companies present ads in a way that are actually beneficial to the user. You like what you see because they have so much information on what you're into, the content that you consume, and they show you relevant things. So oftentimes the ads are actually helpful. Where on other platforms, ads get in the way. It's something you have to watch and get through. It's a pre-roll ad, or it's just something that you try to skip as fast as you can. But with Roku and Pinterest, they're actually helpful ads. I think that's really key for the company, good for the users, because they're going to enjoy that experience and make the company money. You know, when we talk about how many people are using Roku devices, of course, it continues to go up because they have fantastic market penetration. It has accelerated. You can see a nice little bump around the quarantine, and it is pulling back now, but it is on a nice uptrend as they're doing extremely well in TVs. I think that Roku TVs are about 1/3 of all TVs sold in the US. And so they're getting these devices out there, and it's a bit of I guess it's kind of like a Trojan horse. I mean, the actual revenue from device sales is basically nothing. I mean, it's very insignificant when you look at the total company revenue, but it gets that user used to using it as an aggregator of content. You've got all your different subscriptions on your one Roku, and now you've got the Roku channel that's helping you find things that you may be interested in, and they're collecting ads from that. So it's a really smart setup long term. I love the way this company's looking. On this particular quarter, estimates are around 370. Last quarter was 356. We've got them at plus 4% quarter over quarter. If you do the math, we have them hitting their number exactly. But again, purchase intent with LikeFolio is people talking about buying a new device. And so this is adding users to the role as opposed to streaming or watching new content and watching those ads. And so I do think they're going to hit their number. But one thing that we've seen, if you see that far right bar, the current quarter, October 1st and beyond, it's actually down about 8%. So we're a little bit concerned. The trajectory or the growth of the company is actually starting to move down as far as new devices. I do think that people love what they have, and they're going to continue to crush it on advertising, but the rate of growth is slowing. And Kevin talked about that. If you're trading on a growth company, you're trading on multiples. And if anything starts to slow down, those multiples decrease, which is a compounding effect. Could be bad for the company if that kind of information comes out in earnings.
Yeah, Landon, there are so many things. Trading a growth stock means you believe, right? It means you believe in the future because the numbers are not pretty when you look at the numbers. They're probably going to lose money. Jenny said they're going to lose more than last year for this quarter. The PE doesn't look good. But this company is growing. And so, yeah, but what traders hate and the trading world hates is they want to see that growth growing, right? Not just growing. We want to see you growing at growing. So there's still a lot to do here. But the question I want to ask is for Landon, are the competitors for Roku? Is this the leader in the clubhouse? Apple's a monster, right? So I want to know, again, I'm going to ask this, unfortunately, Landon, every quarter to you, who's going to be the winner here? I need to know the winner, Landon.
Sure. I'll tell you what, they're leader in the clubhouse, but it's after day one. They got 3 more rounds to play. And I think that this is very early in the streaming game, but Roku is the clear winner. I mean, they're many strokes ahead. If you want to continue the golf analogy, they're dominating right
I
now.
like it.
But there is a lot of potential competition out there, and this is a sort of a ripe market. I mean, you've got advertising spend. It was very outweighted a year ago. I think it was something like 30% of content was being watched streaming, where only 3% of ad spend was on streaming. That has come up, and those two numbers have to meet. The market, it's a free market, is going to find those two numbers meeting, and Roku is taking advantage of that through their Roku channel. And of course, just like Alex talked about, if you've got millions of people with an iPhone in their hand or an Apple TV, they're going to be very used to that iOS platform, very used to that whole community of services. And that is the big competition down the road. Right now, Roku is the clear winner, but it is all about the change in the acceleration of that growth, the growth of growth, right? That second derivative. And so that's really, really important. We've got that slowing down fairly significantly for Roku, which we're concerned about. I think long term, this is a fantastic company. I'm a little hesitant on this earnings. I think that there could be a negative impact if they do show some slowing growth. If that's the case, my positions are going to do well, but then I'm going to jump back in and grab more shares long.
Looking at this and trying to set this up for myself and for the viewers and for Kevin and yourself as well here, Landon, just so we can kind of lay it out here. How I see this is I'm just looking at the company profile and everything you guys have said, including Jenny. Obviously, this company is far beyond just selling us the hardware to get us access to the internet on our devices and allow us to stream. It's much more about kind of the partnerships they have with the Disney Plus or a Netflix and getting you to sign up for something, taking a little bit off the top there, advertisements, all of those things is really the big core piece of the revenue component here. And so once you have a Roku device, and clearly there's TCL and so many are TQL, I don't remember, I think it's TCL. So many of those different TV companies have found that it's cheaper to associate themselves with Roku for that marketing bump. And there's Samsung devices, there's LG devices that have this technology integrated. And you've pointed out in the past that the Roku user interface has a stronger happiness. People like that interface, similar to iOS has had that advantage in other places. But I'm looking at this, Landon, on the long term. Would you rather be a company like Roku that you're all in on this? You're all in on making this experience great, and you need to execute. So it's kind of I need to survive, I need to continue to do well. Or would you rather be an Apple where you're just kind of trying to do everything? And if you kind of fludge something here or there, it's not going to really affect the bottom line. Like which place? Obviously, Apple's bigger, but in this space, which one's better to beat?
Well, how many times have we seen Google come into a market or Amazon come into a market and we thought they were going to change the world and dominate because of who they are? And because it was only 1% of their potential revenue, they didn't do it. And someone who specialized dominated that market. And I think that to answer your question is I would rather have, if you're talking about the streaming space, I would rather have somebody whose whole life depends on it, like Roku, rather than someone who, it'd be nice if we could also do this, because we've seen that fail on execution so many times with Google and Amazon, and it's possible that Apple could have the same outcome. So I think that's important. Also, you're talking about all these partnerships. That is one kind of vulnerability of Roku, is that they are at the whim of their ability to negotiate. And so there was a lot of frustration with HBO Max, NBC's Peacock not getting in the platform quickly. Peacock's in there now, but HBO Max is still not. And so that's a bit of a problem. But Roku Channel, they've been able to get themselves into Amazon Fire TV. And so they no longer need their own device. They're creating their own thing that can go out and be on other devices. So really smart execution by the team at Roku. I think they're doing a great job. Long term, I love them. I'm worried about the slow of growth for this quarter.